Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we will be battling two modernized entry, kind of mid-level Japanese divers. So, specifically, we'll be looking at the new for 2016 Ray 2, as well as the new for 2016 Seiko Turtle Reissue. So, we could start out a little bit about Orient and Seiko. Orient was established in 1950, Japanese in origin, of course, and their focus is really on mechanical watches, although they do have a few quartz models. In contrast, Seiko was established in 1881, also originating from Japan, but they have a wide range of different types of watches, from mechanical to quartz to kinetic, as well as solar. So Seiko definitely covers a more broad spectrum, while Orient is a little bit more specialized. So we are comparing two dive watches here. So just some key characteristics for a dive watch. You're going to want something with water resistance, normally to include a screw down crown, something that's tough, legible, has a dive bezel for timing, and preferably a diver's extension on the bracelet if you can get one. So let's go ahead and just kind of compare some of the stats here, and we'll pick them up and take a closer look. Okay, so the main difference between these watches, I'd say, that you definitely want to take in consideration before comparing the two is the price. Essentially, the Ray is really less than half the cost of the Seiko for the Turtle Reissue. So, is the Turtle really double the quality and double the value? Because it's going to be double the cost. So I know that probably a lot of people were seeing, that I was going to match these two up, and, everyone was thinking, well, the Turtle is such a great watch, it's going to win by a landslide. So, although, yes, I think it is all around a better watch, there are some things where the Orient excels, and I just want to cover those items. And, maybe those things aren't important to you, but they could be important to somebody else who's out there that's making the decision, especially when a tighter budget is involved. So let's take a closer look here. So as you can see, the size-wise, because the Ray's face is a little bit larger, the dial itself, right, versus the Seiko's, which has, I'd say, a smaller dial because it does kind of encapsulate the chapter ring. Although it is larger, it's 41.5 millimeters versus 44.3 millimeters. I mean, that's a decent little difference. When you look at them right now, I'd say it's a little bit hard to tell. You can tell which one's bigger, but it doesn't seem by much. So, I think if somebody's in the market for either of these watches, they would be comfortable wearing the other. Height-wise, not much of a difference. It's just about 0.4 millimeters difference there. So, it's really a difference in the design and kind of the way it wears and the execution, not necessarily a game of specs. So they both have 22 millimeter lugs, as you can see. Both stainless steel construction, both have mineral crystals, although the Seiko does have their own proprietary hardlex mineral. They both have unidirectional rotating bezels with 120 clicks. As you can see, the Ray is only indexed to the first 15 minutes on the bezel, while the Turtle is a full 60-minute index. So while we're here, and also you can see the finishing is, they both have matte bezel inserts, while the Ray has an angled bezel. The Turtle has almost a concave bezel, but it's more on the flat side. So let's go ahead and compare the bezel action. Very tight, very solid clicks on this bezel, nice and notchy. Let's try to get it back perfect. All right, very nice. So now let's take the Turtle. Definitely easier to grip, but I'd say the bezel action is just has a little bit of a hollow feel to it. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I'd say compared to the rest of the build quality of the watch, I think that's the one thing where the Turtle definitely, I just feel it's not really up to par with the feel of the rest of the watch. When you look at all the components all together as one, that's, for me, the bezel does fall a little bit short. So also one thing to note is that the bezel insert, the 12 o'clock lume pip on the Turtle, has a little thin layer of hardlex that actually covers that lume pip, which protects it, which is very nice, versus the Ray does not have any lume pip there, so it is susceptible to getting dirty or kind of advanced patina. It's just it's a little bit more exposed to the elements. So the crowns are both screw down crowns, and here's one of the places where the Ray does excel a bit. It has a signed crown, a very nice signed crown at that. As you can see, there's the Orient crest versus the Seiko, which is the sterile crown. A nice crown. It does tie into the vintage vibe, but it definitely would have been nice to have a signed crown, especially at the price point that it's at. Now they both do have upgraded movements, so both with hacking and hand winding, 3 hertz movements, which is 6 beats per second. So and they have about the same power reserve. So there's really not much of a difference. I'd say accuracy wise, the Seiko is running slightly better. I'd say, it's maybe plus or minus 1 second a day, while the Ray I've seen more so about I'd say plus 3 to 5 seconds a day, which is good, like actually really, really good. And the Mako 2 that I have actually has the same movement, and I'd say it's in between, I'd say, around just plus 1 to plus 3. So, there is some variance. I think I did get, I pulled the lucky straw on the Turtle, while the Ray also great. That's definitely great rates I'm getting out of it, but just comparatively, the Seiko is a little bit more accurate, and the winding action, I'd say, on the Seiko movement is a little bit smoother. As the more you wind the Ray, you can really feel the tension in the movement from winding the mainspring, versus the Seiko just feels a lot smoother throughout. It's a much more gradual feeling, but initially winding feels pretty good for either. Although the the Orient feels a little bit more metallic, almost grainy, and that kind of increases as tension gets put on that mainspring. So as far as the dial goes, you can see we have a sunbrush finish on the Ray versus the matte finish on the Turtle. And I think that's kind of another point where the Ray excels, because that is actually harder to execute. They both do have applied indices, and the loom is applied nice and thick on both, but some of the differences you'll see is the very nicely framed day and date window on the Orient, as well as the applied Orient logo there, the crest up underneath the 12 o'clock marker, which is definitely a nice touch versus the pretty much purely printed on text and script that's across the Seiko. Both have fairly balanced dials. The symmetry is pretty nice. I'd say not really polarizing designs. Definitely, these dials won't offend anyone by any means. So they both do have really nice loom, which we'll get to. But one of the things is, I'm not sure if the camera can pick this up. They both do have a bit of a hint, in that I think it's probably going to look more white because of the studio lights here. But the daytime coloring on the indexes, the Ray does show a little bit more of a hint of green versus where the Turtle appears slightly more white. I mean, you can still see some green in there, depending on the lighting. But I'd say, I think probably the camera's going to wash that out. But there is a slight difference. And then as well as the loom, although they both glow green, I think the Seiko loom does sometimes tend to have a slight tinge of blue, which is really cool. So it just gives it kind of a cooler tone as far as the loom goes, and it makes it seem a bit brighter. We'll see if the camera can pick that up or not. So let's actually, just while we're talking about loom, let's go ahead and take a look. Okay. Cool. All right, hit the lights. Oh, actually, let's just charge these up with the black light very quickly. Make sure they have a nice charge on them. And there you go. As you can see, I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up. They both definitely glow green, but the Seiko does have, I think sometimes, I don't know if it's my eyes playing tricks on me, but I think you'll see also when people capture photos of the Seiko's loom, that there are times where it just kind of has I'd say a cooler, lighter tone to it. And I don't mean cool as in like quality, it's really cool. No, I mean like temperature wise, it's a cooler tone. I think in the color spectrum as you take a look, which I think the camera is able to catch. So let it run a little bit. Everyone loves a good loom shot. Okay, now we're back. Both watches, of course, are 200 meters water resistant, with the Turtle being ISO qualified, which is good. And now let's can zoom back out. Take a look at the bracelets. Okay, so the Ray, unfortunately has hollow end links. It does have solid links though, which are nice, and it uses a nice, pretty easy to adjust just the directional push pins there, which is good. And then similar clasp It's a little bit, I'd say, lacking in the precision of execution that the Seiko has. But it definitely does the job. And, most people will take these watches off of the bracelet more often than not. So looking at the Seiko's bracelet, it's definitely a lot more solid and it just feels more sharply finished. The edges it's definitely there's a nice level of precision in the execution there. And then we do have the diver's extension, which is a nice touch. One thing though is, it's Seiko's stamped folding clasp. It's just, although it may be functional and structurally might be strong, it's really not great to look at. It's a bit of an eyesore. And I'd say, and then it makes it a little bit worse when you contrast it against this really solidly built bracelet, versus the Ray, which has, the Ray, which it does have a stamped folding clasp as well, but I just think that aesthetically, visually, it does appear nicer. I'd say I can appreciate the way it looks a little bit more, and it doesn't quite, for me, it just doesn't scream kind of the cheapness that Seiko's clasp does, at least the folding portion. So definitely nice pieces. Let's go ahead and get them on wrist for final thoughts. So I am a lefty, so I'll start with the Seiko on the left arm, and then I'll do the Ray. Whoops, I'm sorry, confused. Seiko on the right arm and the Ray on the left. So as you can see on the wrist, there's, they really don't wear too different from each other. I think that the Ray definitely is, although it might lack that standout kind of X factor that the Turtle has, with that retro vibe. It's more sedate, more subdued, and you could say it's just a slightly more classic. Just can pull this up here, get kind of a closer look. That Sunray dial, I feel like it does gain a lot of bonus points. Okay, so the Ray does have more classic proportions, while the Turtle, it really has, those retro cushion case proportions. The Ray more versatile, really, as far as its flexibility and things. I think it would look great on a leather and NATO and rubber, versus where the Turtle, I think it's really at home on more on NATO. And, I think it's really difficult to find a strap apart from NATO that this is really going to sing on, apart from the bracelet. I think it'll look good on mesh as well. The Ray is definitely going to be something that's more of a forum darling. You're not going to see them often on the streets, and if you do, that person's kind of a watch insider, right? So that's really cool. It kind of has that feeling of exclusivity, but at the same time, the Turtle's really a cult classic. It wasn't just an icon for wristwatches. It was really kind of an icon of the times. It was really a popular watch, and for good reason. It just really screams that purposeful 70s kind of vibe, which I really like a lot. Now, as far as bang per buck goes, I think, of course, features wise, the Ray is really has the bang per buck, to a T. At under $200, it's about $160. You can have this hacking, hand windable, solid links, hollow end links, but solid links, nice clasp, You know, nice feel, sunray dial, 120 click bezel. It's definitely very feature rich for the price. I mean, it's cheaper than a Seiko SKX that doesn't have, you know, that the bracelet isn't half as good, and and you know, the movement isn't updated, and there's no hacking hand winding on an SKX. So I mean, just purely specs wise, this is a great piece. Now, I think you can get a lot of bang per buck out of the Turtle if you really think about for what it is and what it kind of taps into. It really taps into that vintage X factor. You know, the Longines Legend, the Oris Diver 65, you know, Tudor Black Bay. There's definitely, you know, it just kind of taps into those, you know, those kind of boyhood watch crushes of the days of old, right? It just goes back to a simpler time, very stylish. You know, it's something that comes with a story and a heritage, right? And a real lineage. So, you know, the Ray has that too, but it's definitely not as illustrious, right? Its story is that it's kind of this cool watch that, you know, people have kind of stumbled onto on the forums, and you know, it's a real, you know, it's recommended right up there with the Seiko SKX, you know, whenever people are trying to figure out which watch is the watch for them. So, you know, I think the Turtle is definitely a better watch in many ways, but you know, the Ray is really no slouch, especially now that it's updated and everything. It's a great piece. I'm actually going to be modifying this, so there are going to be some changes coming, and I look forward to posting those. But I think as is, it's a really great piece, and it's one that, you know, for its price, you can really knock it around and not feel bad, you know, which is really nice. Versus the Turtle, it's a little bit harder to find, and you know, you're gonna pay a little bit of a premium right now to snag one. So, you know, you are gonna be a little bit more careful with it. But you know, its aesthetic is great. I mean, I can wear this watch with a pair of shorts and flip-flops to the beach, and it's gonna fit right in. This watch, you know, the Ray might be a little bit dressy, but at the same time, that's kind of good, right, for when I need it to be. Versus, you know, the Turtle definitely is a casual watch. You're not gonna want to wear a long sleeve shirt and try to, you know, although it's only slightly taller, just the case shape, right, the sleekness in the bezel. Let me try to get a look at that. As you can see here, it's just, you know, just the case profile. You know, this is just a lot more low profile, a lot more slick. So great watches. You can't go wrong with either. But you know, I know a lot of people were probably expecting the Seiko to come with a 1-2 punch and really knock the Ray out. But you know, I think that the Ray really holds its own. And I think even if it costed more, you know, you add $100 more to the price tag, and it's still a great value. So considering you can get it for around, you know, 160 bucks, that's pretty outstanding. So, and it does have those fine little details, you know, the crest, the signed crown, you know, the nice, well, of course the date window's covered right now, but the great date window framing there, and it does have the break in the day and the date. So versus here, also covered, when you see the day, especially on the white day and date disc, you can see the little gap kind of in between the two discs, especially with a white day and date disc. As you can see, the kind of space in between there. So that might, you know, bother some people. It doesn't really bother me. But it's normally one of the reasons why I prefer the black day date disc. But on here, you know, they kind of, you know, they turned it into a positive. They really sharply executed that that frame there. I mean, the framing work is so nice. I mean, it's really comparable to, you know, my Christopher Ward C60, which also has an outstanding date frame. So, you know, closing thoughts. both great watches. You can't go wrong with either. I think it's really more so as far as which watch is the one for you. That's more of a subjective question. Which one is more your style? Because I'd say objectively, they both definitely have all the right stuff and make all the right moves. And the Turtle still is a great value. There's a lot of people on the forums that are, that were a little upset as far as the pricing goes, but I still think it's a great value. At it, of course, you'll see some vendors selling it for, over $500, which is a little crazy, I think. But the prices are starting to settle now with the availability and kind of the abundance of the models now here stateside. So, I don't think that the Turtle is like some overpriced show pony. It's a great watch and a great value in its own right. Like I was saying before. And the Ray, I think just it's really tough to deny this watch, right? It's just a great piece, and I'm a sucker for the Sunray dials. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing and getting the word out about the channel. And definitely stay tuned for more great content to come. All right, thanks guys. Bye.